you know, asking for the Palestinian territories or something like that to be added to. I have never made that a formal recommendation for the Unified Command Plan, and that was not in what I submitted this year, nor have I sent a memo to the White House on any of this.
The Obama administration. Mark Perry, what's your response?
Well, General Petraeus is exactly right. After I published my piece, I received a call from a senior officer in the Pentagon who said, General Petraeus has never given the request that you mentioned to the White House, but he did give it to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I went back into my piece and changed it, despite the fact that 3 senior officers in CENTCOM had said it was true. I'm not arguing with General Petraeus. He's made the claim. He's not a man who lies. I made the correction. He's absolutely right.
And Mark, I have a question in terms of the broader picture of what's going on right now. Is this a big rift in U.S. policy toward Israel? You talk about the Petraeus briefing. There's been the flap created with Vice President Biden's visit, strong words from Secretary of State Clinton. There seems to be a slight toning down of the rhetoric right now. What's happening right now? Is this just rhetoric, or is there going to be a real change?
Well, you're absolutely right. There has been a toning down in rhetoric. However, watching the Secretary of State on Sunday in particular, I don't think I've ever seen her so angry about something. And you know, this is more than a hiccup. Is it a crisis? No, it's not a crisis. But the United States has made it very clear to the Israeli government what needs to be done here, that this building project in East Jerusalem needs to stop, that there have to be confidence-building measures, and that the Israelis have to go to the peace table in good faith. And I think that's the expectation. Those requirements have not changed, and we're waiting for Israel's answer. This is not a crisis. We're not going to end our relationship with Israel, but this is certainly more than a hiccup in our relationship. This is an important break.
And this issue, going back to General Petraeus, talking about the U.S. relationship with Israel actually jeopardizing U.S. lives. Take that a little further.
Well, Israel's not our only ally in the region. We have very close and strong ties with Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Egypt, with all of these Arab countries, and we have troops on the ground in Iraq and Afghanistan. And if you go on the ground in these countries and you talk to the people in Iraq and Afghanistan, they're concerned about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I mean, it's hard for us to believe, but if you spend any time in the region, I spent 20 years there, this is #1 on everyone's agenda, not the war on terror, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. So it's true. If we can solve this problem, if we can push both sides to the table, if we can come up with some kind of a solution, this helps us immensely on the war on terror. If it doesn't, it's another excuse for the terrorists, the Jacobins, the hardliners, the let's burn it down and start over crowd to really go up against us. This is an arrow in their quiver, and we should be able to take it away.
Mark Perry, your book is Talking to Terrorists, Why America Must Engage with Its Enemies. What's your assessment of the prospects for a peace process that does not include Hamas?
I think it will fail. Hamas won January 2000 elections in the Palestinian Authority, the most transparent, honest, fair, open elections in the history of the Middle East. They didn't win by a little bit. They won by a lot. They retain enormous credibility inside the Palestinian territories, and they can disrupt a peace process that only includes one group of Palestinians. This isn't a group of graduates from a charm school. These are tough-minded political people, but they're committed to their people, they're committed to their cause, they're committed to democracy. We should bring them into the peace process. We should induce them to sit down honestly. They're willing to do that. They've expressed it many times. I don't think without them that there's much prospect for success.
You were once an advisor to Yasser Arafat. How have things changed or not changed since then?
That's a good question. It's interesting. You know, Yasser Arafat had enormous prestige and stature among his own people. He's the one man who could have brought a peace process home with a willing partner, like Yitzhak Rabin. If Rabin had lived, and if Rabin had remained prime minister with Arafat, I think that this would have been done by now. I know we had a problem at Camp David, but that was with Ehud Barak. With Yitzhak Rabin and with Yasser Arafat, this problem wouldn't be there. I have that confidence. He could make compromises that no other Palestinian leader could, and he was willing to do it if he got his minimal requirements met. At Camp David, he didn't. It's a tragedy that we were so close and weren't able to really bring this thing home. And it's going to be more difficult now, and it'll be more difficult as time goes on if we don't press both parties right now.
But both parties in Israel, including under Rabin's government, continued to build settlements. As Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu said, every government since 1967 has built settlements around Jerusalem and in the West Bank.
Yes, but Rabin had some principles that Arafat and the American administration agreed to, and that was no surprises. When the Vice President of the United States lands in Israel for a visit of friendship, don't surprise him with 1,600 units. Make a phone call. That's all Arafat and the administration here in Washington at the time required. No surprises. You know, when you have a person of Vice President Biden's prestige and stature from an ally, your strongest and best friend in the world, and you insult him and humiliate him like this, it causes enormous problems. We have enemies in the world who don't like us, who don't do this. This is supposed to be an ally of ours. I think that there's a sense that the tenor has changed here, that Israel believes it can push back on us, that we're an ally of theirs, not the other way around. And that fundamental formula has to change. This was really a shocking thing that happened, and I think it has to be rolled back.
Finally, how hard do you think the U.S. can push? Just a few months ago, the Obama administration basically agreed that the Palestinians should agree to continued expansion of settlements in East Jerusalem as a precondition for talks.
Unfortunately, we're going to have to leave that question, Anjali, for the next time we speak with Mark Perry, because we've just lost the satellite feed. But we're going to go to a break, and we're going to wrap up in a very different place, in New Orleans, just after Hurricane Katrina. But our guest was Mark Perry, veteran foreign affairs analyst and author. His latest book, Talking to Terrorists, Why America Must Engage with Its Enemies. Stay with us.
Jeez.